Good morning. Welcome to this webinar. I'm Christine Stone, so I'm going to talk you through the questions that we received, and I'm also joined here today by Lieve Rotjes, who's also going to help answering questions. The Ask the Expert search and ranking is something that we're trying out. It's not as straightforward as other Ask the Experts webinars because there's often not a straightforward answer to questions. It's a relatively complex scenario. Also, we received very different questions. We had, I think, about 13 questions that were submitted that we're going to address here. And then you can obviously also answer or ask questions in and use please the QA for that. When you ask a question, can you please tell us which product you're using, because search and ranking can be quite different depending on if you're a Primo user or if you're a Summon user. So please do say that when you post a question. So we're trying to answer those questions at the end. Search and ranking is not something where you have one expert because it's so complex. So it's not just Lieve and me today. We also have someone at hand, one of our algorithm experts who's going to help us if there are any questions that are going deeper into the system where Lieve and I just don't have the expertise to answer that. So hopefully between the three of us, we can answer your questions. We also received a couple of questions which were very much implementation questions, which were very specific to certain environments. That's not something that we can answer here in the webinar, just simply because there's going to be, it has to be a conversation because there's going to be some questions about what you're doing, what you want to achieve, etc. It's not just an answer that we can straightforward give here in the webinar. So for those questions, we're going to contact you afterwards and see if we need to schedule a call or if we can deal with this by email. Okay, so let me just start with a couple of slides to give a sort of introduction. I hope this works, yeah. So I added some notes here. That's just based on some experience with, questions that we received over time about search and ranking. Just a few notes how this, with some background information, which I just thought would be useful here to have. So first of all, we have an article about search and ranking that's quite detailed. That's on the CKC. So I put it here as a link for reference, so you can also later on refer to it. And some of the questions you asked certainly refer to also some things that are already mentioned in that article. Generally about users and user behavior, user expectations are relative to their experience with consumer platforms and web search engines. There are obviously also exceptions to that. We do have users who came from the good old library system and who have some sort of expectations that are relative to their experience with that library catalog. Older faculty members, etc. Just compare this to their own old experiences. But generally speaking, users' expectations are really shaped by consumer platforms and web search engines. Also, users usually only look at the top results. They do not scroll down through long lists. Again, there are exceptions, but that's just something that we need to take into account. Only very few users use Boolean operators. We do have advanced users who do that, but most users don't. They also don't use the advanced search features. The majority is really just typing in keywords or copy and paste some strings like a known item title or something into the search box. Ranking in general seeks to create a balance. That also means changes in one area can create weaknesses in another area, and we have this particularly when we look at known item search versus topic exploratory searches. We want to make a change in the known item search to improve something in the known item search, and it actually does have some negative impact on the topic search. That's particularly relevant for short topic searches, where you have a short topic which also matches exact titles. So the system doesn't really know whether this is a known item search or whether it's an exploratory search, and it needs to make some guesses here, and we just need to make some decisions, and in some cases this works really well, and in other cases it doesn't work so well. So sometimes it's just a matter of balance here. Search and ranking is not static. That's something we continuously enhance and improve. That's really the goal here. Also, we get continuously new content, and therefore we obviously also need to adjust the search engine. We also get feedback from you and for your users, and we try to improve this really all the time. The goal here is to be able to provide users with the best possible results for their searches, obviously. Search engine enhancements are small in nature. That's also worth mentioning. There's actually, with every release, there is a search engine enhancement, at least one, usually several, but most of them you will never notice because they're really very small in nature. Even if we try to make some bigger change, like last year, we did a lot of improvements for known item searches, but we did it really just one by one. And that's mainly to not cause any bigger disruption. So this is the kind of introduction. We had a couple of questions about the static rank. So I'm going to start, before I go to the questions, I'm going to explain just very briefly what the static rank and the dynamic rank is, because I think this is very relevant for these two questions. So in relevance ranking, we distinguish between the dynamic and the static rank. It's also called dynamic boost and static boost. That's the same thing. I think it's just depending from which product you're coming from. Sometimes it's just called the rank and sometimes the boost. The dynamic rank represents how well the user's query matches each record. That's really purely about the search. It has some factors that come into play here. One is the field weighting. So if it finds something in the title, in the subject field, it gets a relative high weight. If it's found in the abstract or even the full text, it's relatively low weight. Full text is really the lowest. Term weighting comes in, term frequency and field lengths, verbatim match boost, phrase and proximity match boost, exact title and title subtitle match boost. And then there's also a known item search boost. So these are all things that are coming in. And there's more detail about this also in the article that I referenced in the previous slide. The static boost represents the value of each item and it's independent from the user's search. So factors are, for example, the resource type. Is this an article? Is this a book? Is this a book review? Is it a newspaper article, etc.? Publication date. Is it scholarly peer reviewed? Citation counts is a factor here. The journal rank. The journal rank was actually one of the questions, so I come back to this later on. And whether it's an anonymous author or not. Anonymous authors are ranked lower than specific authors. So this is just a general overview over the difference between the dynamic and the static rank, and I'm going to start with the actual questions now. Okay, so the first question was, can we get more explanation about what the static rank is for? Why not just using the match of the search to rank results? It's a very good question because this is really kind of about the definition of the static rank. It's basically, the answer is very simple. There are too many results in a large index like CDI, where you have 4.5 billion records that compete for the top spots in the result list, and in fact, any spot in the result list. The less specific the search is, the more results are returned, and many have the same score for the dynamic rank. So the dynamic rank, again, is representing the match of the search to the results. And in order to rank items, we need a second score for this, and this is the static rank. So it re-ranks results that have the same dynamic score according to a list of value parameters and conditions that are just mentioned, the resource type, the date, etc. So there's a whole lot which is coming in here. So that's basically the static rank. A system like CDI cannot exist without a static rank. Every search engine which is dealing with a big index like this has some sort of static rank feature. And then the second question is, what exactly is the journal rank that is used as part of the static rank? This is what I mentioned earlier. We have something that we call the journal rank, or sometimes we also refer to it the high quality journals, etc. So this has a very specific definition. Definitions, like everything in search and ranking, is certainly up for improvement. It's not something that is static, but this is the definition right now. So CDI uses the metrics from the Shimago journal rank to boost relevance ranking of articles. So currently, CDI uses a normalized version of the H index published in the Shimago journal rank. And normalized here means it is using our own mathematical calculation to make sure that the amount of boosting is adequate and is not too strong. So for example, a journal with an H index of 300 is not boosted 10 times more than a journal with an H index of 30, and the latter would still sufficiently benefit from the journal rank factor. So there's some calculation here going on. Again, we are continually reviewing and adjusting this, the impact really of various relevancy ranking factors, everything really about relevance ranking. And specifically, the journal rank metrics is something that we are looking at right now. So for example, example, we are planning to improve the journal rank factor by considering the disciplines of the journals more and weighting journal rank scores accordingly relative to the discipline. But this update journals in certain disciplines such as arts, humanities, and social sciences would be boosted more than they are now. So currently there is a slight advantage towards journals which are coming from the science, technology, medicine area, because generally speaking they have higher scores than in the arts and humanities and social sciences. So we're trying to equalize this a little bit more, and that's the update we are looking at. Again, it's not going to be a dramatic change, but it's just going to add a little bit more diversity in terms of disciplines into the search results. Also quite important for searches which are not unique or not very specific to one discipline and which could really go into different disciplines. So this is about the static rank. There were a couple of questions about Boolean searches. The first one is, what are the limitations in terms of number of Boolean operators and number of characters in one search string? It's a typical question where there is no straightforward answer, because this is not exactly how it works. There is a limit for the number of terms and phrases allowed in a search query, and that's really to protect our search systems from extremely extensive and slow queries that put a lot of load onto the system. This limit applies whether Boolean operators are used or not. So Boolean operators themselves are actually not a factor here in the limit. And there's just the example here. So the query north or west or northwest, they have the same number of terms in the query. It's not so straightforward to say how this internal limit corresponds to the maximum number of terms or phrases used in a user search query, and that's because CDI's query parser expands each user query term or phrase to search in different fields such as title, abstract, author, etc. And at a finer level, each term or phrase is further expanded to search in multiple languages. As a result, each term or phrase could be expanded to search in the French version of the title field using the French text analyzer, the German version of the title field using the German text analyzer, and the French version of the abstract field, the German version of the abstract field, and so on. So if you type in a search, it's not about the number of characters this one search or this exact phrase has. There's a lot happening in the background, and only the result of this entire calculation is really taken into account when the limit comes into play. So there's no direct answer to this and direct number to give here. There was a second question about the Boolean searches. The question was, I encountered a difference between searching with Boolean operators in the simple search and in the advanced search all fields. The ranking seems to be the same, but the number of search results is slightly different. And the answer here is that Solr is treating the simple search. Solr is the search engine that we're using, I should add here. So Solr is treating the simple search slightly different to the advanced in terms of how it defines the phrases. This is actually not intended, it's not purpose, and we do treat this as a bug. But it's a minor one because the effect is really minor. The ranking is still the same, you still get the results you want to get, but the number just differ, and I appreciate that this can be confusing. We will be aligning this better. It's just not something that we're going to fix immediately, just because other things take precedence. So again, it's not meant to work this way, but we're going to address this at one point. Then a couple of questions about exact phrase searches. How is exact phrase search defined in CDI? And the answer is you can search for exact phrases in quotation marks. That's like in every other search engine, or most other search engines. It will, however, automatically add inflections, and that's singular plural forms and character normalization, and just simply because this is how most users expect a search to work. Just keep in mind, users really come from all the general search engines that come from their general websites, and they just have certain expectations, and that's really what this is. So the examples we have here is neural network also searches neural networks, and street facade also searches street facade with a different character here. These are the same examples that you also see on the article that I referenced at the first slide. And then a follow-up question here. Why is it not possible to just have an exact phrase search without any automatic expansion, singular, plural? It's kind of repeating what I just said. We developed the search engine according to how the majorities of users search. They really see the discovery system relative to their experience with web search engines, consumer platforms, etc. And they don't understand the differences. In order to find as many relevant results as possible, inflections are necessary, even for exact phrase searches. Ranking does, however, take the exact phrase into account, so it gives it a higher boost. And if all other things are equal, it gives it a higher score than its variations. So in the ranking, that should actually work, taking into account that there are lots of other parts that are also coming to play here. But all things equal, the exact phrase will rank higher than its variations. Known item search. The question was, we've seen some odd behavior when using the in a keyword search. For example, the key to survival keyword search brings up nothing, but key to survival brings up the book we are searching for. Could you please help us to understand what might be going on? First of all, this is not how it should work. So if you have something like this, please do open a support ticket for this issue. That needs to be analyzed and addressed. The word "the" is treated as a stop word in the English documents. CDI's exact title match boosting feature also has a special handling for definite articles in multiple languages. So both search queries, the key to survival and key to survival, should retrieve the target record. The ranking might slightly differ depending on other factors, but you should definitely be able to find the book or the material. I don't know what that is, if this is a book or an article or something else. But you should be able to find this with both searches. Treatment of material types. There were a few questions, I think 3 questions about this. Specifically about book reviews. Can we prioritize certain kinds of resource types to come up first in search results? Also, can we have certain resource types such as reviews display after books, for example? It's not possible to configure this locally. CDI, and that's the same with most search engines, handles relevance ranking in 2 steps. It assigns a relevance score to each result based on how well the search query matches the record and how valuable the record is, and sort the results by the relevance score. The result with the highest relevance score will be the first results. Those relevance scores are computed from various relevance factors, and CDI relevance ranking algorithm does assign a higher weight to book records than to book review records. But there are obviously also other factors that come into play. I think the main problem with book reviews is actually that it's often not possible to identify them, and they are labeled as articles. And if they're labeled as articles as a resource type ranks quite high. It gets quite a high score. So that is, I think, one of the key problems when it comes to the book reviews, not necessarily the items that are labeled as book reviews. So generally speaking, book reviews rank far lower than books. So they should come up after the book in the result list, depending on other factors, obviously also the dynamic rank, but they should come up after the book. But not if they're labeled as an article, then that's problematic. Okay. The question was, is there a way to hide reviews for books in Primo search results without using AngularJS, or at least rank them so low that they don't appear at the top of the search result list? First of all, there is no real function for hiding a resource type from the result list. Users can use the sticky fuzzy function to exclude resource types, and you can use that same function to add the parameter. And I'll show you a screenshot in a minute in case you haven't seen that yet. That might be quite useful to the link to Primo from your library homepage. So I'm just going to switch to the screenshot. So you can add the parameter with the facet to your link to Primo from your library homepage. That means that the user is going into Primo already with the sticky facet. Any search they run has a sticky facet on the left-hand side here on top, or on the right-hand side, depending where you have your facets. So that's an option to do it. It's not that straightforward. There's no kind of function to say, you know, we're removing certain resource types entirely from the result list. But that's a way to deal with it. Just going back to the question, because there was a second part about the ranking. CDI's ranking algorithm assigns a very low weight to records classified as reviews, but assigns a relatively high weight to articles. That's what I already mentioned in with the previous answer. So if book reviews can be identified and labeled as such, then they get a relatively low score. Unidentifying book reviews is unfortunately not that easy, but we're enhancing such matching mechanism continuously to be able to label more book reviews correctly. So at the moment, we're looking at other metadata parameters or metadata flags that could give us better information about whether something is a book review or not. So that's something that we're working on. So hopefully over time, we'll be able to do this in a better way, and we get more that are not labeled as article. Okay, there's another one of material type, this time not book reviews. How to make particular material type ranking lower in the results. For example, ProQuest dissertation collection currently is higher in ranking display on top, higher than articles in the result list. However, our academics prefer to find journal articles first. Could we control which material type to rank first? About dissertation results, CDI's ranking algorithm is currently tuned such as journal articles with high citation counts and journal articles published in high quality journals, that's going back to the journal rank that I mentioned earlier, are scored higher than dissertations if everything else that affects relevance scores is equal. But other factors are not equal in most cases. In other factors such as publication dates, field matching, title versus abstract versus full text, all play a role in determining the relevance score. So it's not necessary that dissertations come up on top, but if there are certain factors coming into play, then it can happen that they come on top. While it's not possible to tune the ranking algorithm based on just one search case, this could really negatively affect other search cases. I mentioned that earlier. That's really problematic to just change it on one side and not on the other side, and then you just create some more problems. It's just difficult to do. But we always welcome that feedback. We are maintaining a list of reported ranking issues, and we take a holistic approach to tuning the ranking algorithm. So although we might not fix one search or a few individual searches, we are looking at the holistic way to address things here and to improve such things in the index. So please do report them. We may not come back with a fix or anything, but we will take this into account. And for the dissertations, if we determine that dissertations are ranked too high in most search cases, we'll adjust the ranking algorithm accordingly. I should also add here, please do add examples when you open cases. The more examples we have, the better. About search features in general. What are the indexes where you get additional data from when applying your search algorithm? I already know about the index where you have singular plurals, English American spellings, numbers spelled out numbers, misspellings, and this I can easily explain to my clients. What other things are consulted? I want to know so I can understand a bit more when I get results that seem a lot higher up in the result list than I think they should be. So the answer is that CDI applies various language-specific text analysis techniques. It's actually not the indexes. There are no indexes here. It's more about analysis techniques. It does it at index time and query time, such as various forms of the same word can be cross-searchable. And these techniques include stemming. For English, it handles the singular plural differences. For some other languages, it also considers various forms of verbs, adjectives, adverbs, etc. Character normalization, of course, for English and many other languages, it handles case differences and diacritics, for example, fines and fines. For Chinese, Korean, and Japanese, variations of Chinese characters, traditional versus simplified, archaic versus modern, etc. Chinese is a little bit more complex here, and they are also cross-searchable. Spelling variations for English, it handles American British spelling variations, and synonyms for English, some synonyms as like big and large are cross-searchable. So that's also taken into account. There are more details in the article that I referenced earlier. So obviously there are a number of things that come into play here. It's a little bit more complex than just listing some things that are happening in the background, but there is more information in this article. So this is just a very brief overview of the main things that are being used. A question about open access material. Can you rank open access below subscription database results? Generally, no. The search engine does not factor in open access or subscription when ranking results. And given that for the same journal, one article can be open access and the other one can be subscription, we do not believe that this really adds value for the majority of users. I'm actually wondering, when I see this question, I'm actually wondering if this is not more about specific collections. I know that some open access collections have lower quality material than others. So maybe that's more the question here. Generally, open access is really not a value or not value parameter. So using that as for ranking, I think is not a good idea. But maybe you're referring to certain databases, etc. That's that I don't know. Okay, I just wanted to mention that I'm not sure what this is about. And I think that is the last question that was submitted. Searching for institutional repository article. It's actually not a search and ranking question per se, but it was submitted. So anyway, we'll just edit it here. Is it possible to get article level searching for a journal that is in our open space institutional repositories? And the answer is, if the articles are indexed in CDI, or if you use Primo, your local Primo index, then yes, that's possible. There are two possible ways. The articles for this journal are indexed in your repository, and you load the repository content into your local Primo index. Or the articles are indexed in CDI, and you have either an active portfolio for this journal in 360 IMO SFX, depending on which product you're using, or if this is activated on collection level, an active collection. So I don't know if this answers your questions. Otherwise, please do send us an email afterwards, and we can go a little bit further into this, because this is really more of an implementation question than search and ranking. As I mentioned earlier, we also had a couple of very specific implementation questions that came, I think, earlier today. And this is something that we will contact you by email, because that's too complicated, and it's too much of a conversation really to just answer this simply on the screen here. I think this was the last question that we got